Big U's empire is falling. The LA Kingpin just surrendered to face murder and RICO charges, but not before dropping bombshells about who set him up.
Well, ain't no turn against me. I ain't going for that. You might as well go get 600 and whack.
From NBA stars losing millions in rigged dice games to nonprofit money vanishing into his pockets, let's explore how hip-hop's most feared power broker is going down and taking names with him. Big U sentenced. Eugene Henley Jr., also known as Big U, has turned himself in after a federal RICO indictment. Before doing so, he posted one final Instagram video while heading to face the charges.
So this is gonna probably be my last video. I'm gonna go turn myself in to see what's going on. They talking about I'm a fugitive. So they just raided all my houses. 600 was actually with the police when they raided my house. And he's actually got video and footage of it. So y'all know what y'all dealing with.
Big U said 600 was there with the police during the raid. He also named Whack 100 and Loose Cannon, saying they were involved in the setup and pushed things online to build a case.
And I just want to say this to y'all. When they raided my houses and my property, it was asking about Whack. Whack, Loose Cannon, 600, and this internet stuff. All of y'all filed. All y'all who be sending around the internet.
He blamed not just the names he mentioned, but also the people online who fueled it. He said likes and shares helped push the case forward.
All y'all who be promoting and listening to what these saying, all y'all giving these likes and hidden likes, all y'all supporting this. All y'all guilty of this. If you had something against a black man, you should handle it with a black man in the streets.
He also didn't believe the way the case was being built. He said the people listed in the indictment weren't even connected to him.
And I'm looking at the people they arrested. How you gonna go arrest people that I don't even talk to? That's a built-in liar right there. You know what I mean? So, is that how they gonna work the case?
He said they were stacking charges by putting names next to his, people he doesn't speak to. He warned the feds were trying to flip those people against him.
So if you want to arrest certain dudes, and put them next to me, them is the dudes you gonna have to call themselves turning against me. Well, ain't no turn against me. I ain't going for that. You might as well go get 600 and whack.
He made it clear he wasn't cooperating and wasn't scared to name who he thought really set him up.
I ain't been nothing but a help to our community. But I guess it is what it is. This the price of being black and trying to help somebody, trying to help your community, and do what you can.
Big U said everything he built for the community got ignored once it was time to indict. He turned himself in, but didn't leave quietly. He called out the people he said helped bring him down and walked into custody on his own terms. Right after Big U's final message, the details started spilling out. The feds didn't waste time. The charges, murder, human trafficking, extortion, and more. He hasn't said much about the specifics, but he did make one thing clear. He says he's innocent. Big U stood on it. He said, "I did nothing wrong." He's confident he'll beat the charges, but the paperwork says otherwise. The feds are calling it a criminal enterprise linked to the Rolling 60s neighborhood Crips. They say Big U was running the whole thing like a boss, using his name, his rep, and his music ties to move money, power, and fear through Los Angeles. He's now charged under the RICO Act. That means they're not just looking at one crime. They're stacking everything: murder, fraud, extortion. They're calling it organized crime, a full enterprise. This is being called Operation Drawdown. Federal agents said 10 others were arrested, all tied to the same setup. Some were already locked up. Others, like Brian Mejia, turned themselves in right after the charges were announced. The feds also grabbed Sylvester Robinson, known as Vay, and Mark Martin, also called Bear Claw. Both were arrested on the 19th of March, 2025, both charged in the same complaint as Big U. According to court documents, the Big U enterprise worked like a mafia. That's their word. They say it used Big U's street power and old ties with the Rolling 60s to push fear and money around LA since 2010. While the Big U enterprise at times partnered with the Rolling 60s and other criminal elements for mutual benefit, the Big U enterprise is a distinct and independent criminal enterprise engaged in criminal activity, including murder, extortion, robbery, trafficking, and exploiting sex workers, fraud, and illegal gambling, the complaint said. The deeper you go into this case, the darker it gets. According to prosecutors, Big U is suspected in the 2021 killing of a young rapper signed to his own label, Unique Music. Court papers list the victim only as RW. He was an aspiring rap artist trying to come up, but what happened next has left people stunned. Prosecutors say RW recorded a track that called out Big U. They say it was a diss, that it hit too close. They claim claimed that after the song dropped, Big U drove out with RW and shot him. RW's body was found dumped in a ditch off Interstate 15, deep in the Nevada desert. This wasn't just personal, the feds say it was also business. They believe Big U ran his whole setup like a mob boss, not just with fear, but with planning. They say his power didn't stop at street corners. It reached into studios, offices, and boardrooms. They say he used his name and his image to pressure people into silence. His long history with the Rolling 60s and other crews gave him a presence most didn't want to test. Not only did the enterprise expand its power through violence, fear, and intimidation, but it also used social media platforms, documentaries, podcasts, interviews, and Henley's reputation and status as an OG, original gangster, to create fame for and stoke fear of the Big U enterprise, its members, and its associates, the U.S. Attorney's statement said. They're saying Big U used every tool available, not just muscle, but media. They say he used interviews to push his name. He sat on podcasts, appeared in documentaries, and built a brand around being the one who made it out. But behind the scenes, prosecutors claim it was all part of the same plan. The message was simple. Big U is everywhere, and if you cross him, there's nowhere to hide. The music, the nonprofit work, the interviews, even the fame. The feds say it all served the same purpose. Build the image, build the fear, protect the enterprise. Then there's the money trail. The complaint says Big U took donation money meant for his nonprofit, Developing Options, and moved it straight to his personal bank account. The funds came from celebrities, award-winning companies, and even NBA players. That nonprofit is backed by the city of Los Angeles. It's connected to the mayor's Gang Reduction Youth Development Foundation, which uses federal funds. It didn't stop there. The feds say he filed fake pandemic relief paperwork for Unique Music. On paper, it looked like the business made $200,000 profit in 2019. In reality, it lost $5,000. That should have disqualified him from any loan, but the money still went through. On top of all that, they brought up his past. Big U did 13 years starting in the 90s for trying to rob an undercover deputy for cocaine. That charge never really left his story, and now it's being used again to paint the picture. Federal officials say this isn't just about one man. They say it's about years of violence, fraud, and control. Acting U.S. Attorney Joseph McNally said, "The allegations in the complaint unsealed today reveal a criminal enterprise that engaged in murder, extortion, human trafficking, and fraud." Akil Davis from the FBI backed it up, saying it's part of a bigger effort to bring order to LA's neighborhoods. 10 people were taken in, 4 were already behind bars, 5 more are still being hunted. If the case sticks, Big U could face life in federal prison. Just when it looked like the charges couldn't get worse, the feds pulled out audio, real audio. They say it's Big U talking about catching Wack 100 slipping. According to court records, this wasn't just talk. This was a full chase, with Big U and a group of Rolling 60s pressing Wack hard. There's 15 to 20 with us, with hoodies tied down. I got my hoodie on, all black, tied down. She like, boom, she jumped in the car, paid for UI, and then took off. Boom, this screaming. My wife draws. I see you, Eugene. I see you. Eugene Henley. I see you. He's screaming all that. He's got his blower. UI his blower out UI. But he's up because nobody's around. We like big. I'm like, yeah, big. He like, UI die here, man. Don't do this. My wife, my kids in that car. Draws, draws, draws. Don't do this, he's screaming. And now Wack 100 is firing back. Right after Big U turned himself in, Wack hit Clubhouse. He said the whole situation had nothing to do with him. Wack also denied ever putting out any court documents or sharing info with the feds. He brushed off Big U's claims like they were some made-up internet rumors.
It seemed to me like I've been threatening the paperwork. I ain't said nothing.
He even mocked Big U for acting surprised that the feds raided his houses. To Wack, that was obvious.
What you mean? How did they know? How did they know? How did they know they was gonna raid my house? How did they know? Oh, use the goofy. How did they know? How did they know? How the you didn't know?
Wack made it sound like Big U was out of touch, like the walls had been closing in for a while and he just didn't want to see it. But while Wack was talking, Big U was already sitting in a cell. A judge had just ordered him to stay in federal custody, no bail, not even a chance at house arrest. The court said he was too much of a flight risk and too much of a danger to the public. He's set to have his detention hearing in downtown LA on March 31st. Arraignments locked in for April 8th. No plea was taken yet, just the charges read out loud. Just as things were heating up in court, the internet did what it always does, stirred the pot. As Big U sat in federal custody, a sports account called ML Football decided it was time to bring his son into the mix. They posted, trending, Eugene Big U Henley, a former Crips leader who transitioned into a gang interventionist role, is facing allegations of murder, kidnapping, robbery, extortion, and fraud, according to authorities. He is the father of Dion Henley, Chargers standout linebacker. No crimes mentioned about Dion, no charges, nothing linking him to any of it. But that didn't stop the post from sliding his name right next to a federal indictment. indictment, just to stir up traffic. The fans weren't having it. One reply shut it down fast. Dion Henley seems like a great dude, also a great player, teammate. Hope he is getting through this all right. Another kept it even simpler. What does Dion have to do with any of that? He's a great dude. And one fan made it personal, showing real support. Dude is tough as nails, a guided missile on the field. So sorry for the drama, that sucks for him big time. However, I would take 10 of him on our team if we could clone him. No one's denying the charges against Big U are serious, but dragging his son into it, that's the internet reaching for clicks. Dion is focused on football. He's earning respect in the league and with his teammates. Big U could face life in prison, but to see how he got here, we need to look at his long history of crimes hidden behind his work in the community. Big U's long criminal trail. Long before the cameras, the podcasts, and the viral clips, Eugene Big U Henley was already making headlines in ways that didn't involve music or activism. Back in 1991, he was arrested during a cocaine sting. It wasn't just some small-time drug deal. He tried to rob an undercover sheriff's deputy during a setup. That one move landed him 13 years in state prison, but instead of being forgotten, his time inside made his name even louder. Authorities at the time believed he wasn't just part of the Rolling 60s. They said he was one of the leaders. His sentence didn't slow things down. It boosted his status. By the time he got out in the early 2000s, Big U wasn't just known in the streets. He was respected. But freedom didn't mean freedom from surveillance. The LAPD and FBI were watching him close. Years passed, and they never stopped. He was linked to over 20 major investigations, some tied to drug trafficking, some to guns, others to private gang meetings where violence was planned and approved. Federal agents said Big U moved like a fixer. If a street beef needed handling, he was the one who got the call. If something went sideways, he knew how to pull people back in line. That's how deep his influence went. He also used a different face in public. He showed up in schools. He gave interviews about ending gang violence. He created a nonprofit called Developing Options, based in Hyde Park. On paper, it was made to help kids stay off the streets. In reality, the feds say it was used as cover for fraud and money laundering. The indictment says Big U used Developing Options to collect donations from NBA stars, companies, and even city programs. The money was supposed to fund community programs. Instead, prosecutors say it went straight to his personal account. No middleman, no paperwork, just straight into his pocket. Developing Options was backed by the city of Los Angeles. It received money through the Mayor's Gang Reduction Youth Development Foundation, which also pulls in federal funding. That made it more than just a local scam. It crossed lines. Special Agent Tyler Hatcher from the IRS said, the RICO charges against Mr. Henley and his associates reflect a pattern of crimes that runs the gambit from extortion to tax evasion, all under the umbrella of a well-organized criminal organization led by Mr. Henley. Additionally, Mr. Henley allegedly duped the county of Los Angeles by running a charitable organization that promoted anti-gang solutions while continuing criminal activity that was directly contrary to his charity. The IRS wasn't alone. The LAPD was locked in on this case for years. Los Angeles Police Chief Jim McDonnell said, from day one, the Los Angeles Police Department has been proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with the FBI in this critical investigation. The invaluable expertise provided by the Operation South Bureau FBI task force on the Rolling 60s criminal street gang has played a pivotal role in securing these charges. This is a major step forward in our ongoing fight against gang violence, and it brings hope and relief to a community that has endured far too much. Together, we will continue to protect and serve, working tirelessly to ensure the safety of our neighborhoods. After the feds dropped the charges and the IRS laid out their case, another piece of the puzzle came in, this time from the California Franchise Tax Board. According to state records, Developing Options, the nonprofit Henley used to claim as a youth program, was officially listed as suspended as of April 2024. There was no public reason listed for the suspension, but the label alone means the group lost its nonprofit status. It can't legally operate, can't raise money, and it can be hit with serious fines. A spokesperson from the FTB wouldn't give details on the case, but made it clear, once suspended, a nonprofit is basically shut down from the inside. But that didn't stop the checks from coming in. City records show Henley's organizations were still on contract to receive close to $800,000 in July 2024. That would have been the last payment of a 4-year agreement worth over $2.2 million. The money came straight from the city of Los Angeles through the GRID program, Gang Reduction and Youth Development. GRID is supposed to fund trusted community groups, the kind that step in before the violence starts. And Henley's nonprofits were in that lineup for years. The payments started as far back as 2011. Between 2018 and 2021, the city gave him around $500,000 a year. Then crime spiked after the pandemic. So did the money. In 2023, funding went up after then Mayor Eric Garcetti pushed for more intervention spending. That same year, Henley's group saw private donations donations climbed too. According to tax records for the Ex-Offender Fellowship, the group's revenue nearly hit $2 million in 2023 alone. Nobody knows where all that private money came from. The donors weren't listed in the public filings. But one thing was clear, Henley wasn't broke. Federal tax records show Henley paid himself $95,000 as president and director, but the rest of the cash, it mostly went to unnamed top staff. The titles listed were corporate officers, directors, and trustees. No names, no breakdowns. The feds say that wasn't an accident. They believe Henley was moving donation money into his personal bank accounts. The criminal complaint says he pocketed tens of thousands in funds meant for community work. One donation stood out, a $20,000 gift from an NBA All-Star. That money was supposed to go to kids. According to prosecutors, it went straight into Henley's pocket. It didn't stop there. The complaint also says Henley filed false tax returns, didn't pay tax on hidden income, and even lied to a bank to qualify for a home loan. The case was bigger than misuse. It was fraud on paper, online, and in the system. So what's the city saying about all this? Not much. NBCLA reached out. The mayor's office didn't answer questions about developing options directly, but they did send a statement. The city has strict oversight in place. However, the complaint alleges a sophisticated effort to thwart oversight for many avenues of funding, including the city, a spokesperson said. They also claim to have zero tolerance for malfeasance and said they've increased grid program oversight in the past 2 years. But when NBC asked for the actual records, things like compliance checks or audit trails, no paperwork was shared. The city also made sure to separate the case from the rest of the program. There are more than 20 organizations that serve as grid service providers and hundreds of people who provide prevention and intervention services throughout the city of LA. This alleged act does not reflect the work of the grid program overall, which has helped lead to a dramatic decrease in gang-related violence citywide 2 years in a row. As if the fraud and federal charges weren't already stacked high enough, now the streets are talking about loaded dice and million-dollar losses. According to court records, it all started with a secret dice game in Los Angeles back in June 2019, a big one, high buy-in. This wasn't just any group of players. The room included a professional boxer identified only as AB, his crew, and a few well-known NBA names. The money on the table, real. The setup, fake. A cooperating witness told authorities that AB and his crew rigged the game using teased dice, basically doctored to cheat the other players. That move cost NBA players millions of dollars. But what happened next? That's where Big U stepped in. After the game, Henley allegedly told his people to rough up AB, not just for the cheat, but because AB didn't check in with Henley first. And according to the witness, Big U wanted his cut on behalf of the NBA players who got hustled. Federal documents say Henley directed associates to rue up AB, who had not checked in with Henley, and to get the money back from him on behalf of the cheated NBA players. The report says members of the Rolling 60s showed up to press AB hard. That wasn't just street talk, that was pressure in action, but it didn't stop there. According to the complaint, CW1 said this wasn't a one-time thing. He claimed celebrities and athletes would regularly have to get approval from Henley before attending events in LA, whether it was a game, a party, or a commercial shoot. No check-in, no green light. And if they didn't check in, the witness said they risked retaliation from the Big U enterprise. In one recorded meeting with someone listed as Victim 1, Henley said he got into it with AB again after AB cheated a current NBA All-Star out of $1.5 million and a former NBA All-Star out of $5 million. That's not pocket change. That's career money. Henley even talked about charging the players $100,000 just to help them get their money back. Yes, charging the victims, not for a legal case, not for a lawyer, just for help. And while all of this was going on behind closed doors, Henley was still collecting public donations in front of cameras. That's where Draymond Green and Shaquille O'Neal come in. Both donated to Henley's nonprofit, Developing Options. They thought they were helping kids. They thought they were backing real programs. But according to the Los Angeles Times, the money got rerouted straight into Big U's personal account. Green donated $20,000 in August 2019. Shaq wrote another check for $20,000, thinking it would help Developing Options and the Crenshaw Rams youth team. But the funds didn't end up on the field. Prosecutors say they ended up in Henley's pocket. From 2018 to 2023, the nonprofit pulled in $2.35 million from the city through the GRID program. That's $550,000 a year. Henley allegedly pulled hundreds of thousands from that total as salary, but the mission he shared publicly sounded a lot different. In a 2020 interview with Vibe, Henley explained it like this: the ultimate goal is to be for young African American kids what the YMCA and these other places could have and should have been. They probably were a lot of good things to other people. They just weren't to us because I never had one of them out here. The only thing we had was the park, so I don't really know what the experience was. I always hear them talk about the YMCA and the Boys Club. In the Crenshaw area, we don't have one. As more details come out about Big U's case, a familiar voice just resurfaced. It was an old clip of Schoolboy Q. The timing couldn't be more on point. This clip wasn't made for this moment, but it sure feels like it. Schoolboy Q was talking about the whole check-in thing. You know, the idea that artists, athletes, or out-of-town visitors need to check in with someone local just to stay safe.
Because, I mean, everybody everybody be checking in. That's y'all favorite thing to do, check in with somebody that's gonna rob your stupid.
He used money meant for kids to fill his own pockets, but his power wasn't built on fraud alone. It started decades ago on the streets of South Central, where a young Eugene Henley first made his name. The rise of Big U. Eugene Henley was just another kid growing up in South Central Los Angeles. But this wasn't just any neighborhood. This was the Crenshaw district in the 1980s, a place where the streets raised you faster than your parents ever could. Henley didn't slowly ease into gang life. He got pulled in young. By his early teens, he was already part of the rolling 60s. It wasn't some phase, it was survival. And by the time most kids were still figuring out who they were, Henley had already built a name that people respected and feared. He moved smart. That's what separated him. He didn't just talk loud. He knew how to organize. He knew who to talk to and when to press. That's what helped him rise. By the late 80s, even cops knew his name, not from rumors, but from reports. They watched him long before his first arrest. They knew he wasn't just another soldier on the block. He was a leader. But everything changed when he got out of prison. After doing 13 years behind bars, Henley came home and flipped the image. He founded Developing Options. On the outside, it looked like a fresh start. The nonprofit wasn't just for show. It was tied into schools, youth centers, even probation departments. Judges let him speak to teens facing time. And in those rooms, he wasn't the enforcer anymore. He was the mentor. Henley knew how to reach the kids because he came from the same streets. To many, he played a father figure role, the kind of presence missing from a lot of homes in South LA. And he didn't speak in polished speeches. He spoke their language. But there was another side, one that never got posted on flyers. Henley's presence in LA hip-hop was something that didn't get talked about out loud, but everyone knew. If you were an up-and-coming rapper in Los Angeles, especially from the streets, you couldn't just blow up on your own. You had to move right. You had to make sure your shows, your videos, even your neighborhood drop-offs didn't cross the wrong lines. That's where Big U came in. He wasn't a rapper, but he controlled access. He had pull-in areas most people couldn't walk through safely. And in that world, he helped shape who got protected, who got silenced, and who got through the door. One of those names was Nipsey Hussle. Early on, Nipsey was navigating both music and neighborhood politics. Big U played a guiding role in helping him figure it out. He made sure Nipsey could do what he needed to do without having to look over his shoulder at every step. That respect went both ways. They didn't need to say much about it, people could see it. But here's the twist. The same man being praised in schools and studios was also seen as someone you didn't cross. On one side, he mentored kids fresh out of jail. On the other, he was still known as someone who could shut down events or press entire crews if things got out of line. Big U once stood for peace through the American Foundation, started by NFL legend Jim Brown. He worked in the Charge program, which taught gang members how to step away from violence and take control of their lives. He spoke about change, he mentored youth, but that didn't stop the street politics. One incident made that clear. Reports confirmed a parking lot dispute between Big U, Nipsey Hussle, and Black Sam outside the Marathon clothing store. It was over property and power. Say Big U tried to take control of land connected to Nipsey's brand. Sam wasn't having it. The argument nearly turned physical. They had history. Big U helped Nipsey early on, but as Nipsey grew, so did the distance. He didn't want anyone managing his block but him and his family. After Nipsey died, Big U barely spoke. Even with that silence, people in LA still knew his name carried weight. Wiz Khalifa once called him rap's godfather, not for his lyrics, for his reach. He shaped who got protected, who got blocked, and who got heard in LA hip-hop. Artists checked in, or they faced problems. Now the same man who was once backed by city leaders is stuck in prison. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, check out the suggested content on your screen by clicking one of the cards displayed.